The Rose Garden at the Woodland Park Zoo was established 80 some years ago with a fair bit of help from the Seattle Rose Society. And we come out here once a year in February to put on a pruning demonstration for the public, again to encourage people with the hobby of growing roses. A couple of invaluable pieces of equipment: my knee pads and my goatskin gloves. Goatskin are the most puncture resistant of leather gloves, and they're very flexible. I happen to be very obsessive and compulsive about tools, so I have a big pair here and a small pair over here, and then because my hands are getting older, I have a pair of pruning saw in my pocket, and I get by with that quite well. Just what I can carry on my body. I'd rather not carry my tool bucket or toolbox with me.
The diseases that we've got in the Northwest, the two that are the biggest problem, powdery mildew and black spot, are both, virus diseases that are caused in large measure by moisture, cold nights, warm days, and moisture. And those things on the leaves of the roses cause those diseases to present themselves. Black spot tends to be what you get earlier in the season in April, May, June, July, and then powdery mildew, which is sort of just a grayish, the leaves kind of pucker up, and that you get later in the year. Those are the two diseases that we really have to deal with in the Northwest. You can control them by spraying, or you can control them, at least in part, by hygiene. And hygiene, keeping the plant open, keeping good air circulation around it, getting rid of all the old leaves from the year before, clean them up, throw them away, get them from around the plant. If you do those things, get all the old leaves off the plant too before you finish your pruning. And that will go a long ways towards controlling the disease on your roses. Well, actually, the very first thing I'm doing this is alcohol, which I'm going to sterilize my pruners with, because if these bushes have like crown gall or some disease, you don't want to transfer that from bush to bush, which you do by cutting.
Right. You want your bud union exposed so that the bud union is sitting on top of the ground. If you have that thing covered up, you're not going to get new growth coming out of it, because the sun has to hit the bud union. If you have shoots that are coming out of the ground that are coming from the bud union or the base of the bush, that's a good thing. You want those. You want those. Now, if they're coming from below the bud union on what's called the shank, those are not good. That means the rootstock that the hybrid has been budded onto or grafted onto is emerging, and so you want to remove those, and the best way is to gouge them out, cut them out, not to cut them off. If you cut those off, they're just going to make more.
But the first thing I would normally do is I'm going to take out these little canes right down at the base that aren't really going to accomplish anything. This guy's dead. And I would also see this, how it's brown, dark brown here? That means this has a problem. Now, these are really good Felco pruners. You can see, you can just really get right through there with that. But you can also use these loppers, and they're, a lot easier to do. But you can see how, if you look at the center of that, see how it's brown there? Kind of, this cane is dying, basically. It's old and it's weakening, and that's why the top looks like that.
The lower you prune, the fewer the flowers you'll have, but the larger they will be. Speaking more of, say, hybrid tea type roses. The higher you prune, the more flowers you'll have, but the smaller they'll be.
We start looking at, okay, how are we going to shape this plant? What you want to do is to make it grow outward like a vase or an urn, because that keeps the center of the plant open. It lets sunlight get in, it lets air circulate around it, and air and sunlight are two of the best things for preventing disease in your roses. So now, what I'm looking to do is to prune to an outside bud. See these little buds? By an outside bud, I mean one that's facing outward, because it'll sprout and grow out like that. And I cut about half an inch to an inch above that bud. If you cut any closer, there's always a little bit of dieback from where you make the cut. If you cut any closer than that, you run the risk of it dying back to the bud, and then the bud dies. But if you look at this cane from the top, what you'll see is that the buds have a very distinct pattern. They spiral down the plant. This one's here, the next one's here, the next one down is here, the next one down is there. They go around like that. And so if you're looking for an outside bud and you see one facing here, if you go down, the next one will be facing outward. So, and the other thing you'll notice is that roses have, like a lot of plants, what they call apical dominance, meaning there's as they sprout, the hormones flow up the plant to the top, and they concentrate on making the buds at the top of the cane sprout. So if you look at this cane, this one's a good example. The further down you go, the less the buds have sprouted, and that's because that hormone is flowing up to the top of the cane. So don't worry if you cut a cane that has this kind of sprout on it down here. This bud is just as healthy as this one. It just hasn't sprouted as much because it's lower down on the cane. If you cut on an angle, then the water won't stand on the top of the cane, and just it'll run off, and that makes the cane a little healthier. If you have a spindly little cane, I tend not to leave them. I tend not to leave canes that are any smaller than this, about the diameter of a pencil, because I've found that canes that big or bigger produce good, healthy blooms.
It's called pruning when you do it in February and the first part of March. In April and May and June and July and August, it's called grooming. Although it's the same thing, isn't it?
A lot of good. This is one of the best places to grow roses in Washington and Oregon, in the whole country. Of course, I'm biased, but it's true. We grow some of the nicest roses here. So you just need to learn how to do it and what to grow well, and Sale Rosa and other societies can certainly teach anyone what they need to know.